It turns out, the hardest thing you did today was probably getting out of bed and walking to the kitchen, not the spreadsheet you finished, or the strategic planning session you sat through. The actual, physical act of balancing on two legs and navigating a cluttered hallway is a task so computationally expensive that for 40 years, we essentially gave up on trying to make machines do it. We've had computers that can beat grandmasters at chess since 1997, and we've had software that can pass the bar exam for over a year. But if you ask a $1 million robot to pick up a single crumpled up piece of paper from a moving table, it'll likely freeze, fall over, or crush the table entirely. This is Moravec's paradox. High-level reasoning requires very little computation, but low-level sensorimotor skills require enormous computational resources. We've spent decades perfecting the brain in a box, but we're only just now figuring out how to give that brain a body that doesn't feel like an afterthought. We're moving past the era of the digital assistant and into the era of physical AI, and it's happening much faster than the skeptics realize. The jump from lab prototype to factory floor isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a fundamental shift in how we think about labor. But to understand why this is finally working now, after decades of failure, we have to look at the specific mechanical bottleneck that kept robots trapped in the world of software. For the longest time, if you wanted a robot to move something heavy, you used hydraulics, big, noisy, leaking pistons that could lift a car but lacked the finesse to handle a light bulb. When we talk about physical AI today, we're talking about a move toward pure electrification. The muscles of modern humanoids are specialized, high-torque actuators. These aren't just off-the-shelf motors you'd find in a power drill. They're incredibly dense pieces of engineering that combine a motor, a controller, and a gearbox, usually a harmonic drive, into a single unit. The goal here is torque density. A humanoid robot needs to be roughly the weight of a human to operate in our world, but it needs the strength to move heavy crates and the battery life to last an 8-hour shift. If you make the motors stronger, you make them heavier. If you make them heavier, you need more battery. If you add more battery, you add more weight. It's the same tyranny of the rocket equation that NASA deals with, just on a terrestrial scale. Companies like Figure AI and Apptronic are obsessed with this mechanical efficiency, because without it, the most brilliant AI in the world is just a very expensive paperweight. But even with the perfect motor, there's a missing sense. We take for granted that we know exactly how hard we're gripping a glass of water. A robot doesn't know that instinctively. It only knows what its sensors tell it. This is leading to a massive surge in tactile sensing technology, robot skin essentially, that allows the machine to feel pressure and friction in real time. Yet even with a perfect body and perfect senses, the robot still doesn't know what to do. It needs a way to process the chaos of a factory floor, which requires a type of orchestration that traditional software simply wasn't built for. Traditional industrial robots operate on if-then logic. If a car frame is at coordinate X, then move the welding arm to coordinate Y. It's precise, but it's brittle. If the car frame is half an inch off, the robot crashes. Physical AI tosses that entire philosophy out the window. Instead of hard-coded coordinates, these machines use what we call foundation models for motion. Think of it like a large language model, but instead of predicting the next word in a sentence, the AI is predicting the next pose in a movement. To do this, the software has to orchestrate a staggering amount of data. It's taking in 3D depth maps from LiDAR or cameras, balance data from internal gyroscopes, and pressure data from the feet, and it's running all of that through a neural network at hundreds of cycles per second. This is end-to-end learning. The robot sees the world and directly outputs motor commands, without a human engineer ever having to write a line of code saying, lift leg 30 degrees. The shift here is from automation to autonomy. Automation is a toaster. It does the same thing every time. Autonomy is a person. They adapt when the toast gets stuck. This orchestration is what allows a robot to walk across a floor covered in bubble wrap, or navigate a factory where people are moving around unpredictably. It's an incredible feat of software. But it leads us to a massive practical problem. Where do you get the data to train a motor brain? You can't just scrape the internet for how it feels to walk, because that data doesn't exist in text form. To solve this, we've had to turn humans into high-tech puppeteers. If you want to teach a robot how to fold a shirt or plug in a charging cable, you could try to program it for a year. Or you could just show it. This is the teleoperation phase of physical AI. If you look at the labs of companies like Sanctuary AI or Tesla, you'll see people wearing VR headsets and haptic gloves, literally driving the robots. When the human moves their hand, the robot moves its hand. But this isn't just about remote control. The robot's sensors are recording everything the human does, the exact amount of force used, the subtle wrist adjustments, the way the human compensates for a slippery surface. This is called imitation learning. By capturing a few hundred demonstrations of a task, the AI can begin to find the patterns. It starts to understand the intent of the movement, not just the movement itself. The fascinating part is that once the AI learns the latent space of a task, say sorting packages, it can actually perform the task better or more consistently than the human pilot. It doesn't get tired, and its reaction time between its eyes and its hands is significantly faster than ours. We're essentially downloading human dexterity into silicon. However, teleoperation is slow. You can't have a human pilot for every robot if you want to deploy 1 million of them. To scale, we need a way for robots to learn without us, which brings us to the sim-to-real pipeline. The fastest way to train a robot isn't in the real world, it's in a digital one. This is what companies like NVIDIA are doing with platforms like Isaac Gym. They create a digital twin of a factory, a world that obeys the laws of physics, gravity, and friction perfectly. Inside this simulation, they can run thousands of versions of the robot simultaneously, 24 hours a day, at speeds much faster than real time. In the simulation, the robot can fail 10 million times in a single afternoon. It can fall over, break its virtual legs, and drop virtual boxes until it figures out the optimal way to move. This is reinforcement learning on steroids. Once the robot has mastered the task in the simulation, the brain is then downloaded into the physical hardware. This is the sim-to-real transfer. The challenge, of course, is that the real world is noisy. There's dust, there's weird lighting, there's the way a floor slightly flexes. If the simulation is too perfect, the robot will fail the moment it touches real concrete. Engineers have to introduce domain randomization, basically making the simulation intentionally messy to ensure the AI is robust enough for the real world. This bridge between the virtual and the physical is what's finally allowing humanoids to move out of the cool demo phase and into actual commercial production. But that raises a massive question. Which industries are actually going to pay for this? We aren't going to see humanoid robots in our homes doing our laundry for a long time. The home environment is too chaotic, too unpredictable. But factories and warehouses? They're perfect. They're semi-structured environments where the tasks are repetitive, ergonomically taxing, and, increasingly, unfilled by humans. We're seeing the first commercial pilots right now. BMW is testing Figure AI's humanoids in South Carolina. Amazon is testing Agility Robotics Digit in their fulfillment centers. These robots aren't doing everything. They're doing very specific, boring things. Moving empty bins, picking up sheet metal, logistics tasks that currently require a human to bend over and lift something every 30 seconds for 8 hours. The ROI, the return on investment, is finally starting to make sense. If a robot costs $100,000 but can work 2 shifts a day for 5 years with minimal maintenance, the hourly rate of that robot drops below the cost of human labor in most developed nations. And crucially, these robots don't require the factory to be rebuilt. Because they have a human form, they can use the same doors, the same elevators, and the same workstations we do. It's brownfield automation, upgrading the workforce without tearing down the building. But as these machines start to clock in, we're forced to confront the reality of what it means to coexist with a machine that looks, moves, and works like us. It's easy to look at a video of a robot stumbling and think the robot revolution is a long way off. It's also easy to look at a highly edited promotional video and think it's already here. The reality is in the messy middle. We are currently in the early access phase of physical AI. The hardware is finally robust enough, the software orchestration is finally fast enough, and the training data is finally flowing. We are moving away from a world where AI is something you talk to, and toward a world where AI is something that moves crates, stocks shelves, and eventually builds the infrastructure of our civilization. It's the transition from intelligence that knows to intelligence that does. The most profound change won't just be in our economy or our supply chains, it'll be in our perception of what a machine is. For the last century, a machine was a tool you operated. In the era of physical AI, a machine is a partner you collaborate with, or at the very least, a presence you share a space with. We've spent 40 years trying to get the ghost into the machine. Now that it's finally there, the real work begins. If this shift in how we build and train the physical world's new workforce was as fascinating to you as it was to us, you'll likely find our other deep dives into emerging technology worth your time. Thanks for watching.